and welcome to Honey Badger Radio number 49. It's time for Feminist Fails. I am your host, Brian, and I am joined by the Honey Badgers. Let's go down and let you guys know who's here. I think it should be obvious by now, but I'm going to do it anyway. We have Allison.
Hello. Stop
Hello.
bleeping.
I'm not... Oh, that's the fucking... Hold on.
Who's booping?
Okay. Yeah,
booping. It's not bleeping, it's booping.
It's booping. People are like...
Stop it. It's annoying. Bloop, bloop, bloop.
Great, now we have our boops out in public.
Boops out in yeah.
People are
I do right out there.
I took my boops out.
All right, I just removed boop. Okay, so remove.
What do you got against boops, Brian?
I had to. I'm sorry, I had to go. Like kebabs. And Karen is here. And
Hello.
Hello. And Hannah is here. Hannah Banana.
Hello.
And speaking of bananas, Anna Cherry is here.
Hello.
Hello. And our special guest is Sierra McCord. Hello, Sierra.
I thought when you said hello, Sierra. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought when you said bananas, we were having the Amazing Atheist on.
Oh God.
You tricked me, Brian.
Speaking of bananas, we have to make of that what you will. So we're gonna. I think that's it for the intro. So we're gonna look at some stories dealing with. Well,
Wait.
What?
No, wait.
What?
What? Oh, wait, what? Well, it's the shillings.
All right.
It's the hour of the shilling. So yeah, we still have a fundraiser. We're about $80 from 9,000, in which I promised to force Brian to draw you guys something lewd.
Is it over 9,000?
Not yet. It's not yet over 9,000. It's getting close.
Over 9,000.
Okay, yes. It is close to 9,000, but it is not yet over 9,000. And when it is over 9,000, Brian will be doing the lewds.
They better.
I demand someone smash a scouter if it goes over 9,000. Someone buy a scouter and smash it.
I demand Super Saiyan hair on all of his drawings.
Okay, well, there's getting to be a lot of demands on the lewds. Apparently, they have to include the spaghetti monster. They have to include that guy T and NC Clark, and they also have to include bodily fluids and Super Saiyan hair.
Yeah, I think
So basically
the sand hair.
It's essentially if all the dank memes of the internet had an orgy.
Yeah, except for Bad Luck Brian. That'd be the only meme that wouldn't make it in.
Aw, poor Brian.
And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the meme itself.
I just realized.
The pimple-faced kid that's smiling. That's Bad Luck Brian.
The ginger pimple face.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well,
Sweater vest.
And if you're interested in helping us get to these events and cover these events, Airplay 2 and Simon Fraser Advocacy for Men and Boys, She for He event, which should be a lot of fun, go to www.feedthebadger.com and throw some shekels in the hat. And if you're not going to do that, if you're listening to this and saying, why would I fucking fund these fuckers? What the fuck? Why? Consider taking a moment to pen out exactly why it is that you don't want to do that, and send it to topic@badgerpod.com, because criticism does help. It does. It's good. We like it. Rough.
Yes. Rough. So you want to get into it now?
We like it, and we like it rough.
Yes.
And we do not deny this.
We have some feminist fails.
Yes, we do.
Let's look at the feminist fails. So, Hannah, before we do, though, there is some breaking news. And it's not wind. But we did catch wind of it.
Yeah, and this is going to be fun to try to... I'm looking at it in Google Translate because the story that was sent to me was actually originally in German. So forgive me if I mess up reading from this and explaining what's going on, but Apparently there was a major arrest made during I guess it wasn't an attack that actually took place, but a terror suspect has been arrested with a well-advanced, as it describes in the story, a well-advanced attack plan. And the source of this is the Interior Minister. It looks like they're calling it a significant arrest. A planned advanced stage attack was foiled. And it was related to the previous attack in Paris and the attack in Brussels. So this is just coming out of Europe now, and I didn't find anything yet about it in English, but it's probably already being reported in English, and I just didn't find the news story yet. So that's basically what's going on.
That's actually that's super scary to think that, you know, that happens, but it's also super comforting to know that the French government is capable of stopping it before it happens.
They caught the person at least.
Maybe they freaking learned from some mistakes.
All right.
Yeah, it says the suspect was French and was suspected to have played an important role in attack planning. He had moved into a terrorist network that began to strike in France. The arrest by the domestic intelligence on Thursday morning was preceded by weeks of intensive investigations. So they had been tracking these guys, and they arrested the individual, and they are learning more about the organization. So it's scary news, but it's good news because it means that it's working. Whatever they're doing is working as far as tracking these guys and actually stopping them instead of being surprised and being taken by surprise.
Instead of mopping up.
Yeah, instead of mopping up. It's much better to catch them instead of mopping up, even though it still is scary news because we know the attacks are still coming. But we already knew that. I mean, they've been telling us that.
Yeah. Ugh.
All right.
All right.
Let's move on then. So what's our first story? We're going to talk about Jian Ghomeshi. Do we want to get into that?
Oh, I'll talk about Jian Ghomeshi.
Okay.
Yeah, but are we gonna do it rough?
Oh,
We're going to do it woof.
I'm gonna do it rough.
Yeah, me too. Because I read the entire
do
thing.
It rough, young'uns, as y'all might know. Jian Ghomeshi, a male Iranian man of the swarthy, dark-skinned, masculine kind, was just declared not guilty of menacing and mashing a clutch of pure white women just today. Okay, I'm done with that. I'm just going to read the blog post that I posted today. He was found not guilty by a judge in Ontario court on several counts of sexual assault and one count of choking with the intent to overcome resistance. The charges stemmed from 3 complainants who claim he slapped, punched, and or choked them during sexual encounters going back more than 10 years. I'm not going to rehash all the nitty-gritty details of the case and the charges here. I would actually recommend going and watching Diana Davison's videos on the Ghomeshi trial. And I'm going to ask Allison to link those. She's got a playlist of them in the low bar of this video because Diana Davison really did a lot of heavy-duty digging and research. She lays it.
Wait. I have a playlist?
No, Diana has a playlist.
No, but I have links to this?
No, I will ask you to leave the link in the low bar. I'll get it for you.
Okay, sorry.
But
continue.
there were massive problems with the case, problems with the complainants, problems with media coverage, problems with the Crown's apparent new policy of listen and believe rather than thoroughly vetting complaints of sexual assault. I was watching live coverage by Global News Toronto this morning. It was very fair coverage, actually, of the verdict, where they had a legal expert on discussing the case and discussing the live tweets that were emerging from the courtroom as the judge read his decision, unlike in the Greg Allen Elliott decision, The judge in this case made everyone wait until the whole thing was read before declaring his verdict. And because of this, there was actually a lot of real discussion of the legal issues at hand rather than bloviating on how the verdict will impact survivors of sexual assault and all of that stuff. The crux of the matter before the judge, in the absence of Ghomeshi presenting any affirmative defense, that is, he and his counsel at no point said, here's what really happened, or even here's what might have really happened, was the credibility of the complainants. This was not a he said, she said case. He, Ghomeshi, and his counsel said nothing at all about what had actually happened. The case in its entirety was constructed entirely on the basis of she said. And what she said on the stand and to police and to the Crown involved a lot of lying under oath. A lot of lying under oath. The complainants were exposed as perjurers by defense counsel, and it was demonstrated that two of them were involved in months of collusion before and after their complaints were even filed to police. In a case where Ghomeshi offered no defense of himself, these complainants still managed to sabotage their own cases through their repeated and extensive lying outright, lying by omission, and improper collusion with each other. These women were hoist on their own petards. He offered no affirmative defense, no alternate account of events that conflicted with theirs, no evidence at all in his defense. All he had to do was allow them to destroy their own credibility as witnesses, and they could not have done a better job if they had tried. I have no idea whether Ghomeshi is actually guilty of what they claim he did, but I do know that this verdict was entirely proper. Any other verdict in light of the evidence would be a miscarriage of justice. As the judge said in his decision, every criminal case must begin with the presumption of innocence, and it must end with either certainty of what is true and what is not beyond a reasonable doubt, or a not guilty verdict. How can a judge decide that any witness is telling the truth about anything when they are shown to have repeatedly lied under oath to him about relevant details? The appropriate feminist hashtag for this trial should not be "I believe survivors," but "I believe liars." One thing the legal expert for Global News Toronto said on their live stream of the verdict was that victim advocates, while they will undoubtedly be upset about this verdict, should learn a lesson from this. They need to learn what actually goes on in a courtroom and how the criminal law actually works. And they absolutely do need to do that. If they spent more time figuring out how the law works and why it works the way it does, and less time bitching about how difficult that makes things for victims, maybe more victims would win their cases. If the three complainants in this case had disclosed their interactions with Ghomeshi after the assaults, rather than lying about them, their credibility, what the entire case hinged on in the opinion of the judge, might not have been demolished so exquisitely and systematically on the stand. As I tweeted earlier today, something I rarely do, tweeting, I don't know if Ghomeshi is guilty or not, but I do know that the complainants were all perjurers. I am not willing to send someone to prison on the basis of the testimony of three individuals who are willing to repeatedly and persistently lie under oath. I'm sorry, I'm just not. If there is one lesson a victim advocate could learn from this case, it's this. Tell your victim that lying to police, prosecutors, and the court about details relevant to her case is the most dumb fucking counterproductive thing she could possibly do. It is not the job of the court to decide what might have happened or even what probably happened. It is the job of the court, based on values expressed in the Magna Carta that exist to curtail the ability of the state to become an agent of oppression, to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that the accused is guilty of the crime. Stop telling victims they should not be expected to prove their cases. Stop bitching that the rules, which have already been reformed beyond recognition, are still unfair and should be changed even more. Just learn what those rules are and learn to live with them. Give victims sound legal advice rather than a feminism-inspired pity party. I will repeat. The presumption of innocence and due process of law exist not to allow rapists to get away with it. They don't exist even to keep any given innocent person out of prison. They exist primarily to prevent the state from becoming an agent of oppression. They exist to curtail the power of governments to persecute their citizens, all of their citizens, for whatever reason. This necessarily means that some rapists will get away with it, just like car thieves will, and murderers will, and child abusers will. But it also means that we are smart enough to hold our governments to a higher standard of fairness and justice than we do our rapists and our car thieves and our murderers and our child abusers, because our governments have greater power and wherewithal to do harm to us than any single individual criminal does. So stop fucking bitching and just do your jobs. Stop reforming the system and instead reform how you do your jobs. You'd probably win more cases.
Well, okay. Well, I want to say. Okay. All right. But I have had conversations with so-called rape victim advocates. They don't give it. I don't think they give a flying fuck about getting rapists jailed or even preventing rape. They just want to use rape victims as a cudgel to beat society with, to gain money and moral superiority over people. And the reason why I said that is because I had one of the most disturbing fucking conversations with a so-called rape victim advocate. And the conversation I had was over statistics that showed that fighting back leads to potential rape victims not being rape victims. And the individual question who said he advocated for rape victims said, you shouldn't tell that to women. You shouldn't inform women that fighting back actually can protect you from being raped, because that might make women who don't fight back feel bad.
Oh yeah, no, I've heard that so often. I have come across that so often.
So it's okay. It's okay to have women be raped, as
I
long as
was
they don't.
told that by a therapist who was basically castigating me for fighting back. It's actually in a therapy session. It's one of the reasons I stopped going.
Well, there are some police agencies that also recommend that women not fight back, because they essentially say that that when you fight back, you run a greater risk of physical injury, like having a sprain or a bruise or a black eye or having a tooth knocked out or whatever. But the assumption that this is good advice rests on the assumption that rape itself is not an injury, right? If you consider rape, a completed rape, to be an injury to the woman, to the victim, right? Then when you say don't fight back, when 80% of the time fighting back means you prevent the rape, what you're saying is submit to the greater injury in order to avoid the lesser injury, because these same people who tell women, oh, don't fight back because you might get injured, right? They will say, oh, rape is the most heinous crime short of murder.
Well, there's another aspect to this. There's something that nobody's taken into account here, and this is something I've got to point out. These people, when they talk like this, what they're basically doing is completely discounting women's capability of judgment, of judging a situation, of being able to say, to yourself, I can win this fight, or I can, or I'm going to lose this fight. This is basically them saying that you in that situation cannot look at your attacker and judge whether or not resisting your attacker is going to do anything for you. Whether you're up against somebody that you can, fight back far enough or hard enough to be able to get away. That, you don't have to overpower somebody, you just have to be able to get the hell out of there. Or whether if you fight back, this person is so much bigger and stronger and faster than you, or they have a weapon, and you're going to end up, risking death or risking severe injury, and in which case then you don't fight back. If you're looking at a gun, you don't fight back. If they've got a knife to your throat and you don't think you can make them let go of that knife, you don't fight back. But if you're sitting there dealing with somebody that's not a lot bigger than you, or that has a vulnerability that you can, you can punch them in the nuts, or you can, whatever you got to do, you have to be able to judge that. And the idea that women are just so incapable and so stupid that we can't judge that is deeply insulting. And it's what I always take from this blanket statement that women should never talk about fighting back, because here we have this incapability of making that judgment for ourselves.
And I just wanted to finish my thought because, like I said, talking to this so-called rape awareness advocate was really shocking. So essentially what I took from his conversation is there is something worse than rape. That is victim blaming. And from what Karen is saying, there's other things that are worse than rape. A sprained wrist, or a black eye, or a knocked out tooth. All worse than rape. Well, and then how could you simultaneously say that rape is not as bad as a sprained wrist or victim blaming, but it's also the worst thing that could happen to anyone ever? Well, any woman ever. Men don't get raped. But anyway, Hannah, take it away. You wanted a space, and plow your way into it.
Well, now I feel like I'm not going to live up to your expectations. Well, I do want to point out the fact that, yes, Hannah actually took what I was going to say as well, a part of it anyway, that unless there's a gun to your head or, a knife, sure, absolutely fight back. I don't understand why we're not publicizing or showing on television, etc., more women hitting guys in the nuts whenever they're confronted with a man. Like, you almost never see that. Look, you realize that's like the most sensitive place ever. You could completely disable a man if you do that. So it clearly seems to me that they are encouraging this situation to continue happening. It seems like, okay, so we do know that people say there's nothing worse than rape. All the female advocates, feminists, etc. The person that we were reading their article about Cologne, the woman you read her thing where she was talking about, there's nothing worse than being looked at or touched inappropriately ever. So it's absolutely the worst thing ever. We know this. It's like the biggest fucking deal. So why do we choose to tell women there's something else that could be worse than that? So which one is it? Make up your mind. Clearly, whenever people are making up their mind, when they are being hypocritical or doing two sides of an argument, something else is going on. So what is that something else? I'm not entirely sure, other than just, I guess, a method of continuing to control social narrative, control people and how they interact with you, control men in particular, with the whole teach men not to rape, etc., etc. And it goes beyond just, talking about it in therapy like that, Hannah, that just, I can't even so much that I'm odd. Like, that doesn't even make any sense.
Tell me, Irina, you can't even?
I can't even, man. But but it is no surprise, because we have people like Anna Kana and others who make videos on YouTube and the popular BuzzFeed spaces, etc., where they talk about how it's just totally sexist and horrible to women to say that you need to maybe wear pepper spray, or that maybe you need to not be out at night, and all these safety procedures that her parents are teaching her. That's just, somehow enabling the patriarchy or some dumb fucking shit. I just don't understand how they expect to handle themselves in the real world. We have a generation or a whole group of people who are utterly out of touch with the reality. They're infants mentally and otherwise, and we're not exposing these women to the real world. They are incapable of handling themselves. But they say instead of learning how to handle themselves, everybody else around them needs to change their behavior. It's like, that's not reality. And why do we not extend that courtesy to men? Why does nobody ever stop to think that maybe men also feel unsafe when they walk home from somewhere, but men are taught to be strong and how to protect and learn to fight? Why do we have such different standards for men and women? We are the same species, people.
Okay, I want to bring it back to the topic, which is all the people who are protesting the verdict, and what Karen said about how they're not actually the so-called rape advocates. Actually, you know what? Let's call them rape advocates, because they are advocates for rape, because rape was useful for them. Mm-hmm. It gives them money, it gives them power. So the rape advocates aren't actually telling women who are bringing charges against men how to approach a courtroom scenario in a way to maximize their potential of bring about justice. And like I said, I'm not surprised that they don't care, because if they keep those conviction rates low, that keeps their relevance. It doesn't matter if they keep rapists on the street. That they don't give a shit about that. They want to keep those conviction rates low so that they can keep beating their drums and making their money.
And I just want to add, Ghomeshi wasn't accused of rape, and he's been found not guilty. That doesn't mean that he's innocent, but there's no way that this is not a statement. Keeping rapists on the street, blah blah blah. That's not a statement about Ghomeshi, but it's just a general statement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
no.
he was just accused of sexual harassment, right?
No, he was accused of rape.
He was accused of
Sexual assault. It was sexual assault.
Okay.
He was accused of slapping and or punching women during sexual activity, and he was accused of choking one of the women during sexual activity. But
he was accused of getting too rough without consent during sex.
yes, well, during the preamble to sex, right? Like, I don't know that he actually had intercourse. None of the charges are related to an event that ended in intercourse.
Interesting. So basically, they decided, fuck this, and left.
I think, one of them did. She was just like, but
Only one?
it was discovered that he put his hand over her mouth, one hand sort of on her throat, and one hand over her mouth in the park when they were making out, and she was like, "Oh, this is a little too much." This is what she said. But then she went out for dinner with him again, and then went back to his apartment and gave him a hand job, and didn't disclose any of that to the police or on the stand until evidence of it was presented during trial.
That definitely shows that she was just terribly upset. Terribly upset. She was so upset she had to go back and give him a hand job to make herself feel better.
Yeah, no, like, I'm just...
touch the magic dick and everything gets better.
I was blown away by these women. The other one who claimed she was choked,
I want to point some things out real quick, though, because this is important. Rape convictions are not low. This is something that feminists say that is not true. They're not low in comparison to other crimes of the same degree. They're not low, in fact, in comparison to even lesser crimes that normally would require a lower standard of evidence, because the standard for evidence for rape accusations has been lowered in court systems all over the world in response to feminist activism. So it's not low. It's average. It's normal. In some cases, it's above average, and there is more of an issue of people being wrongfully convicted, men being wrongfully convicted, than there is an issue of rapists getting away with their crimes, because the standard for evidence has been lowered, and it is more likely for the accuser to be believed than it is for the accused to actually be given due process, or at least the aspect of due process where he is considered innocent until proved guilty. It's a different thing when you go in to a courtroom accused of rape. You're not in there hoping that the accuser cannot prove your guilt. You have to go in there and prove your innocence. And the same is true with domestic violence. So, I mean, these protests are worse than just a lie. They're a sense of entitlement. And that they're not demanding justice. They're demanding conviction. And conviction and justice are not the same thing. And justice is basically a legal search for the truth, and then a course of action based on what is found out. And a conviction isn't necessarily a course of action based on the truth, and especially in cases where the evidence isn't all taken into consideration. And with the way this has panned out, with the way the standards for evidence have been so compromised in this kind of case, I mean, it's really my opinion that it should be mandatory that if someone is proved during the course of the case to have committed perjury, and then their commission of perjury was in a way that it would have affected the case if they'd gotten away with it, like that would have caused the guy to be found guilty, or it would have made it impossible to come up with a ruling or something like that. It should be mandatory that they be prosecuted for perjury, because perjury is illegal. And that is where it has a massive effect. That's obstruction of justice. Just the same as if you hide evidence of a crime, committing perjury in the course of a false accusation or to obtain a conviction in contradiction to the available evidence, that is obstruction of justice. It's preventing justice from happening. And it blows my mind that we have allowed our court systems in various countries to get to a point where women can commit perjury in the course of accusing a man of rape and get away with it. And like, I'm sure there's probably, whatever feminists listen to us probably just like chewing the insides of their cheeks out right now. But I'll give you something to make it worse. And like, I've never been accused of a sex crime, but I've been falsely accused. And it's never been in a legal arena, but it's been in an arena that had the capacity to have a profound effect on my life at the time. And it had an effect on the way the people around me treated me and the way they perceived me as a person. And I've been raped. And I would rather, if somebody came along and said, you're going to have to go through one of those again, I would choose the rape. I wouldn't want to go through being falsely accused again.
Absolutely.
And I saw a friend of mine through a false rape accusation, a series of false domestic violence accusations, and 7 years in the court system dealing with that. And he's got post-traumatic stress disorder from it. And I don't have post-traumatic stress disorder from being raped. And I would challenge anybody to go through both and then tell me that it's not worse to be falsely accused.
Yeah.
Sierra, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah, I'm patient, but no, I thought what you said about them not wanting rape to actually be stopped was relevant to the Ghomeshi case in and of itself, because these women in this case, they seemed almost to play off of the rape scare, because from the very beginning of the case, these women were taking advantage of Ghomeshi's situation, because none of them came forward until after Ghomeshi was already being targeted by the media. There was already a scandal going on about Ghomeshi before any of these women came forward. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, these accusations of assault. And to make it even better, I'm not sure if this is true for all three of them, but I know it's at least true for the first two, because I read the court document that the judge read off. The first woman and the second woman, at least, didn't even bring up anything sexual until after the trial started. Whenever they first went to police, all they talked about was the physical assault. They didn't mention any kissing, they didn't mention any groping, they didn't mention any hand jobs or anything. Nothing sexual was brought up until the trial started. So they wanted to make it about sexual assault. They needed to make it about sexual assault so that they could ride this rape scare train and get attention. And I think, based on what I read in the court document, that it was attention they were going for. At least with the second two. I'm not sure about the first one. Can't really speak to her intentions because there wasn't any evidence. But the second woman and the third woman, I know definitely were in it for attention, because the second woman said something along the lines of she liked getting media attention and she loved it. She loved the media shit.
She wanted to be like David Beckham, the David Beckham of Armani underwear. She wanted to be that to rape victims.
Yeah, and she had like a hashtag dedicated to her, I Believe Lucy, and she was all involved with this victim advocacy and blah blah blah. She was getting all this attention, and then I think the third woman was probably in it for attention too, because they were like what's the word I'm looking for?
Colluding?
Yeah, colluding, that's the word. They were colluding with each other. I think they sent something like 5,000 emails back and forth between each other over, like, before the third woman even came forward. They'd sent like 5,000 emails back and forth to each other. So
Yeah, and they said that they had never really been in contact, and whoa, the little contact they hadn't actually discussed the circumstances of either of their cases. And
yeah, it was a big
like,
fat
I mean,
lie.
they just
They, they were all lying. They were all lying from the very beginning. The first woman lied, like
Yeah.
from the get-go. She was lying because she was like, "Oh well, he assaulted me in this Volkswagen Bug, and he didn't even buy that freaking Volkswagen Bug until 7 months after the alleged assault." And then the second woman claimed that she was so traumatized by what he did to her that she just couldn't stand to be near him, and she only went near him occasionally because she had to, and then someone took a picture of her in the park with him, giving him a hug or something. And
Yes, boringly at him. Yeah.
yeah,
That picture was like Lucy Ducoteur seems to be the architect of a lot of this, and she strikes me as the woman who really wanted a relationship with him. She was the one who wrote him the email about how she wanted to fuck his brains out within hours of the alleged assault. And then within a week, she wrote him a handwritten love letter that ended with, "I love your hands," right?
yeah,
And she was the one who was allegedly choked and in fear for her life. And she's a week later writing him a love letter saying, "I love your hands." Now, can you imagine doing that if a man put his hands around your throat and made you fear for your life?
well, no.
Um,
But they all came up with excuses for these lies. Like all of them came up with their own excuses. Like she was saying that she sent the "I loved his hands" thing because she was trying to draw attention to the part of his body that he used to hurt her or something along those lines. It's so stupid. They all came up with all these stupid excuses, and feminists eat it up because feminists have this idea that there's no right way for a rape victim to react. But and yeah, well, that's true, but there's a way that a victim won't react. I mean, there's no way of determining how a victim will react, but there are things that a victim would not do. And one of the things that a victim would not do is write her freaking perpetrator a love letter. She wouldn't do that, and she certainly wouldn't be in a park giving him a hug. She wouldn't be at some kind of karaoke bar singing a song with him like another woman did. But they were all lying, and it's even more obvious by the second woman, because the second woman was not only colluding with the third accuser, she also colluded with a friend of hers, and a friend of hers was actually got up on the stand and was and like I think there was a phone call between the two of them, and the friend was like, "Oh, you want me to corroborate? Haha, yeah, sure, no prob."
yeah, no, it's absolutely like the entire fucking thing. Like, I and I hate Ghomeshi. I fucking hate him. He is such a feminist freaking mangina cunt, right? Okay, and I don't use the word mangina lightly. I really don't. I don't throw that word around, okay? And he is the worst of the worst. Every fucking time he had a feminist on his fucking radio show, he softballed them and he pampered them and he inserted his tongue 6 inches into their assholes, right? That is what he did. That is what he minored in women's studies, right? That was what he took in university. Majored in fucking communications or whatever the fuck and minored in women's studies, right? And like, I can't fucking stand the guy, right? I hate him.
I'll bet he learned more from this experience, learned more about women from this experience than his entire time taking women's studies courses. Just to be fair there. But I'm noticing kind of a pattern here in these major news stories now where this is similar really to the Twitter harassment case where you had the same thing. These women are sharing their stories with each other and getting their stories straight together and all that stuff, and then they get into the courtroom and it all falls apart because they're full of crap. They're exaggerating things, or they're lying about things they did or didn't do. They're downplaying their own agency in the situation, and they're treating what the guy did in the situation as though there was no way to get out of it, no way to avoid it. He has super agency, he has hyper agency, and it's the same thing that you see in the Cosby story. It's the same thing that you see in numerous other big stories in which women have accused men of abusing them in some way or another, and then you later find out that it wasn't the way that the woman has described it, where it wasn't just made up like entirely, where like a Jackie story, there was no guy, but where the accusation has turned out to be false, or it's turned out to be exaggerated, or it's otherwise turned out to be very, very different from what was originally described when you get into the details. And it just seems to me, I can't remember, I think it was Sierra said feminists will tell you there's no right way and no wrong way for a rape victim to react. But the truth is there is a right way. And the reason that most women don't take that right way when they're in a situation where they feel like they're later on that they feel like it was rape, it's because too often they grow up not learning to exercise their agency and being allowed to make themselves feel helpless in the face of somebody else's confidence or somebody else's forcefulness, even when they're not incapable of getting out of that situation. And it's a terrible disservice to women and girls for feminists to sort of advocate and keep advocating that's how we handle things, that we treat women and girls as always incapable, always helpless, always unable to escape a situation, always unable to counter anybody else's forceful behavior.
Too frail.
It's like breaking their legs. It's like it's like I've described it before as Munchausen's by proxy. You have to break women's legs in order to protect women, so that you can feel good about yourselves for protecting women from the terrible men. Hell, teach girls to fight back. Teach girls to stand up for themselves. Teach girls to use the word no when no is what's on their mind. All of this crap about enthusiastic consent, there is no such thing right now. You can't have enthusiastic consent if girls and women are taught that it's not up to us to communicate, and it's not up to us to stand up for ourselves, and it's not up to us to actually exercise force in return if we have to. It's stupid, and it needs to stop.
Okay, two things. Enthusiastic consent, I think, represents feminists and rape advocates' war on the very idea that women consent to men at all. And the other thing is that there is no white knight on earth who's better able to protect a woman than she is herself. And I do not want to live in a mind that relies on men for my protection.
Yeah. I got to say one other thing before you've... all of this, everything that they say, everything that I just protested against gets turned on its head the minute the rapist is a woman and the victim is male.
True. I just also wanted to add that, just very, very briefly, that the law does not protect you from anything. The law does not protect you from anything. The law gives you recourse to seek some kind of compensation after you have been violated, right? But it doesn't actually, like, there's no situation in which a guy is going to start getting fresh, right, in some private place with you, and you feel like, oh, I can't say no, and I can't fight back, and I can't protect myself, and I can't get out of this situation, and there's going to be just like some freaking Batman or Spider-Man or something leap through the window with a badge and a gun saying, yeah, I'm the law, I'm the rape statute, and I'm here to protect you. Yeah, no, that's not how it works.
I want to see that.
The law is for mopping up after the violation. It's not there to prevent the violation.
Yeah, and like I said, the one person who's most powerful in protecting a woman is herself. There's just that she is her last line of defense and her best line of defense. And any white knight who wants to push this idea inadequacy and the fact that women can't protect themselves or shouldn't have to, or it's victim blaming, or we can't teach women to protect themselves because that's victim blaming, they are doing something of huge disservice, because they're essentially taking away women's primary self-protection, which is themselves, and their own willingness to fight and to take charge of their own safety. And I'm gonna show something now. I'm gonna need Brian's help as well, because I'm about to.
All right.
I got this. Yeah, there you go.
I am and I've clicked it, so it should be presenting to everyone.
All right, ready?
Ready.
Survivors! We believe 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 survivors!
How do you verify they're survivors?
Pause it.
Yes,
Just because banana.
What the hell is that?
This is a video from Danny Boy. So he's not gonna. We don't have to do the 20-second thing because.
And there's no algorithm, but is that a protest of the actual case or the hearing itself?
Yes.
It's the protest that was outside the courthouse when the verdict was being read, and they started really hollering after it came out that that Ghomeshi was found not guilty. We believe survivors. We believe survivors. And I believe it was Danny who was yelling, How do you know that they're actually survivors?
Because a man was accused, you know.
Oh, right. Okay, so it's just like, if a woman says something, it's automatically true.
Yeah.
It used to be, years ago, using the word survivor instead of the word victim when describing the fact that you had been raped in the past was a way of saying, I'm not a victim now. It's not happening to me right now. I'm not permanently traumatized by this. The criminal that did this did not have the power to make me experience it for the rest of my life. I've moved on. Feminists have turned it into another badge of victimhood. They've destroyed the use of rejecting the word victim by changing the word survivor in such a way that it basically just means victim. That really sucks. You can't actually have anything. You can't have any kind of agency, any kind of independence, any kind of recovery without these people coming along to piss on it.
Okay, let's continue.
Fuck them.
How do you verify they're survivors?
Survivors! We believe survivors!
Should we trust the trial process out the door? Put it in the garbage?
Yeah, so what Danny has said is should we just put the trial process in the garbage, and the answer is yes. An accusation should automatically lead to a rope slung over a low branch and a man's head in a noose. And I actually got on this We Believe protesters Twitter, and I said, oh, so does the fact that you're bringing back lynching, are you doing that, or are you willing to lynch men? Are you willing to lynch men, and you're colorblind about your willingness to lynch men? So you'll lynch Irish men, you'll lynch Italian men, you'll lynch poor white men, you'll lynch all men. Is that
Black
because
men.
you're really colorblind?
Black men,
or is it because you hate black men? Or is it because you hate black men so much you don't care that you're also lynching white men? You're willing to make that sacrifice just as long as you get to kill black men. Is that what this is? Is this what we're seeing now? Is exactly the same attitude as we had 70 years ago, 60 years ago? Exactly the same attitude, except now you're saying, yeah, well, white men, they're collateral damage in our war against black and non-white men. That we're okay with that. It's progressive now. Lynching all men, it's progressive. Anyway, I'll step off my soapbox because I can't actually see if anybody else wants to talk. Do you want me to continue or talk?
I don't know what to say right now.
Okay, I'll continue.
This is actually blows my mind to see that many people willing to throw their own due process rights out the window. Because none of them really think about this. Nobody is exempt from false accusations. Nobody. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. It doesn't matter whether you're old or young. Your ethnicity doesn't matter. Your citizenship doesn't matter. Your lifestyle doesn't matter. Your community reputation doesn't matter. You are subject to false accusations by somebody at some point in your life if they decide that it's instrumental for them to do it. And it doesn't necessarily mean false accusations of sexual violence. It can be anything. You know, if there's a rule against something or a law against something, and you're in the way of something that somebody wants, and they can use that to get themselves closer to their goal, there are people who will do that. And this is why we have standards for evidence. We have to be able to differentiate between when we are being used as the instrument of somebody's vengeance or the instrument of somebody's, I don't know, just basically exploitation of a system, and when something needs to be fixed, when there is an issue that actually needs to be addressed and something needs to be done, a person's behavior needs to be contained. We have to be able to differentiate between those two situations. And that's why we have to have standards for evidence. We have to have proof when somebody is accused of doing something that necessitates action being taken by an authority or by a community. And if we can't do that, then we might as well, you know, not have any kind of process. If we have to take types of accusations and say, well, this type of accusation is exempt from that process, it doesn't matter then if any type of accusation is subject to that process. It doesn't matter if tax evasion is subject to that process, or theft, shoplifting, traffic violations, anything. Because if that one type of accusation can be used falsely by people to get what they want, then you're subject to it. You know, whoever you are listening right now, you're subject to it. And there's no point in having a justice system or having any type of standards for judging people if we're going to take one type of accusation, one issue, and say, except under this circumstance, we don't care if it's true or not, and we're willing to throw whoever gets accused under the bus. It's the death of justice and the death of reason when we do that. And we cannot afford that as a society if we want to be free of witch hunts.
Oh, that's a tall order, being free of witch hunts. But you know what? I think we should, before we lose our momentum, we should move to the next topic.
Yeah.
Let's get to college men, because it's related to this topic. So Hannah, whenever you're ready, cue up the one on college men suing college campuses because of all of the chicanery that's coming about as a result of the Dear Colleague letter.
Yeah, this is an oldie but goodie. Now I'm scrolling past all of the... Shoot, I can't find it.
Okay, well, I'll just
Here we
keep
go.
talking. All right.
Colleges slammed by lawsuits from men falsely accused of sex crimes under the Dear Colleague letter guidelines. Now, I want to point something out here in the United States. Before I read this, it's not just the Dear Colleague letter guidelines anymore. A couple of years ago, the Campus Save Act was passed as part of the Violence Against Women Act. It was snuck under the radar. There wasn't a lot of media surrounding it, but everything in the Dear Colleague letter guidelines was codified into law. So we're not just looking at guidelines now. And universities are really kind of, they're pinched now between their students and their legislators. They're dealing with, they're not just subject to lack of funding now. They're actually dealing with law. that they have to obey the law, and they have to figure out. And it doesn't really give great guidelines on how to set up their policies on campus and everything. So they're really kind of screwed. They know what the government's attitude is, what the attitudes of the agencies that they have to deal with are, and they know that they're dealing with feminist leanings, and so they've set up their policies for feminist leanings. And that's the situation that we're looking at. These universities, then you have on top of that the staff, basically the personnel at the universities. It's been pretty much taken over as a overall community by social justice ideologues, identity politics. So you're looking at people who, honestly, a lot of them believe the right thing is the feminist thing, and so they're going to already have a leaning towards this to begin with. So this was the perfect storm for this to happen. But on to the story. The three graduates filed suit in July in U.S. District Court in New York. They are also suing Rolling Stone's publisher, Winner Media. That's W-E-N-N-E-R, not winner as in winning. A 4-month police investigation produced no evidence that the attack occurred. The get tough approach by colleges is attributed largely to the Dear Colleague letter. For a very long time, there was no due process for victims. I'm going to point something else out here. Due process is attributed to the accused. Due process is the process of evaluating evidence. It's not for the victims. It's for the court. So for a very long time, there was no due process for victims. Victims were told to withdraw from school. Victims were told to take the semester off, said Colby Bruno for the nonprofit Victims' Rights Law Center. Now, yes, there are more decisions against perpetrators. Yes, perpetrators are being held accountable, and that is going to bother people. Advocates for the accused say that school disciplinary panels are unequipped to handle such serious allegations, and that colleges have gone so far to accommodate alleged victims that they are trampling on the rights of the accused. And I want to point something else out here. Listen to the language again here. The language Mr. Colby Bruno used. He didn't say accused, and he didn't say alleged victims. He said victims and perpetrators. So already we have somebody who's dealing with a bias. Automatically, if somebody makes an accusation, they're the victim, and the person they've accused is a perpetrator. Under the federal guidance, when a school learns of allegations of sexual assault or harassment, it must take immediate steps to ensure the victim's learning environment is free of hostility. Andrew Miltenberg, who represents a Brown University student suspended for 2.5 years over a sexual assault accusation, and close to 100 other male students accused of campus sexual assaults, said schools have become hyper-aggressive since the Dear Colleague letter. A common thread in his cases, Miltenberg said, is that they had some element. Okay, this didn't copy very well. Some element of a consensual encounter in which the two were dating or knew each other. Alcohol is often involved. Sometimes a year or more has elapsed, and there are rarely witnesses. Miltenberg also represents Paul Nungesser, who sued Columbia University, saying it violated his rights when it allowed fellow student Emma Sulkowitz to obtain a class credit for her mattress project in which she carried around the mattress on which she said he raped her. Nungesser denied the accusation and was found not responsible by the school disciplinary process. And Nungesser couldn't get a job in the USA. Said in his lawsuit that he was branded a serial rapist and was forced to return to his native Germany because he couldn't get a job in the USA. A judge this month dismissed the lawsuit, but said he may refile some claims. The article also covers a survey/report from September. Let's see, and there's a link here from CBS News. 1 in 4 U.S. college women report unwanted sexual contact. It was sent to nearly 780,000 students at the association's member colleges, plus one additional university. About 150 1,000 people participated in the online questionnaire. The results were generally in line with past surveys on sexual assault and misconduct on college campuses, i.e. 1 in 4 women say they experienced unwanted sexual contact sometime during college. The study found that only a relatively small percentage of serious incidents were reported to the university or another group, including law enforcement. Across the institutions, it ranged from 5% to 25%. The most common reason cited by students for not reporting an incident was that they didn't consider it serious enough. Others said they were embarrassed or ashamed or did not think anything would be done about it. Now, I want to point out, because I think I know this study, I think I've read this one before. I think in this one, this is one of several in which when you looked at the data, it showed that men reported at a similar rate and reported that female perpetrators at a similar rate. And then it was done in a similar manner to the cost study where they interpreted people's experiences differently than the people interpreted in themselves. So there were things that people basically said happened to them that they didn't consider necessarily to be misconduct, but were labeled misconduct because they fit somebody's definition of it. And but you got the same results from both sexes. In fact, women were accused of behaving worse than the men. So it's kind of interesting to see this. They were more entitled to contact. They had more of a sense of entitlement to contact than the men did.
And this particular study had a 19% response rate, which is this is the one that if you extrapolated the results of the women who claimed that they had been forcibly raped and reported it to their school or the authorities, right? Those are stats that we have actual hard numbers to measure against under the Clery Act. And if you actually extrapolated it to project onto the general population of all female students across the U.S., and you assumed that every report of sexual misconduct that is revealed under the Clery Act is a report of forcible rape of a woman, right? You would need 9 times more reports under the Clery Act than there actually exist in order to match up with reality.
I think there are two major things going on with the discrepancy between what feminists find when they do these surveys and what actually gets reported. The first one is feminists are interpreting people's experiences very differently than the people themselves interpret it. And feminists will tell you that if you and your boyfriend have a couple of beers and you're both a little more than tipsy and you have sex anyway, that your boyfriend just raped you. They won't say the same thing about about your boyfriend. That's the first one. The second one is... The second one is...
Let me clarify first.
Well, I was going to say, the second one is feminists are so busy telling people that they're not going to have any recourse when they make accusations that I think there's a significant number of people who go through these experiences, percentage of the people who go through these experiences and do feel violated, that they don't expect to get any help and they don't report. Because there's this myth out there that nobody's going to do anything for them, when in reality the world bends over backwards for them.
I would agree with that, and it's not even that you're going to necessarily get justice, but you are going to get some kind of help. You are going to get counseling or victim services or whatever. Maybe you can't prove that he did it, but you're going to get something if you report. But what I wanted to just make clear is that in the case of this one discrepancy between the survey numbers and the only real world statistic that we have to measure it against, it's not a matter of the individuals answering the survey not thinking it was, rape when the survey takers believed it was. It was individuals who answered the survey, women who answered the survey, who said, "I was forcibly raped and I reported it to my school," right? And then you go and you look at the reports that were made to the schools, and you take the percentages and you extrapolate them onto the female university population in the U.S., and you find that you would need 9 times as many reports of sexual misconduct in general just to account for the reports you would expect of forcible rape that women were saying that they had reported from this study. This study is not representative of the general population at all.
So you
right?
may have the Jackie factor going on there too. There may be women who are saying that on the survey because they want a result
Yes.
For the survey that
Yes.
never had the experience, or if they did, they never reported it.
Yeah.
And then I know that there are women, because I know women who've done this, who said they've reported things they didn't report because they're embarrassed to admit they didn't. And I've of course run into women who have reported things that were false as well.
Yeah. No, and it's like, so the entire idea that these numbers are in any way reliable is absolutely laughable. And if we are going to consider them reliable, then we absolutely do have to consider the fact that, they should be considered just as reliable when it comes to male victims and female perpetrators. Absolutely 100%. Like, we're not going to do half of one, and 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. We're not going to measure, the rate of rape of males using Department of Justice criminal survey stats and the rate of female rape using feminist freaking advocacy research stats. We're not going to do that. Okay? So we're going to pick a standard and we're going to stick with it when it comes to measuring, whether rape is gendered, whether rape is something that women suffer more than men, that men perpetrate more than women. We're going to do that. I'm sorry, we are.
Probably one of the sickest things that has come out of feminist research on rape is the tailoring definitions to exclude female perpetrators who rape male victims. And it's Koss kind of institutionalized that, I guess you could say. She made it official, not just by getting it taken seriously in Ms. Magazine, which Gloria Steinem was instrumental in making happen, but actually getting it, making it the standard in government institutions. And like the CDC uses that standard in their National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, where rape is defined to exclude victims who are forced to penetrate their perpetrators. The only people that could be targeting are men who are raped by women. It's really going to be a rare thing for that to not be a male victim of a female perpetrator.
And what that does is it turns into collateral damage every 7-year-old boy who's forcibly filleted, who has a pedophile put his mouth on that kid's penis. It excludes him from the definition.
Yeah, and what it basically does is skew the statistics, and it keeps the official response to sexual violence gendered, so that where feminists bitch about women not having any recourse, here we have a situation where the circumstance that is known to lead to people becoming sexually violent, if they're already developing violent tendencies because of other things going on in their lives, if they're already becoming criminally violent, they will add sexual violence to that if they have experienced this. And they'll add sexual violence against the sex that offended against them. So here we have something that we could address in order to prevent future sexual violence, even if we are so callous as to not care about the victims. We could prevent future victimization if we could address this and prevent it. And feminists have actively taken measures to provide cover for it. It's beyond failure. It's actually it's outright malevolence.
It is. It's they would rather hold that sexual aggression and sexual violence, sexual coercion, is uniquely masculine. It's uniquely monstrous, and it's uniquely masculine. They would rather cling to that in order to prop up their bullshit patriarchy fucking unifying theory of the universe, right? In order to do that, right? Than actually intervene at a stage in life when a boy is being sexually abused by an adult woman or an older female with power over him, like a babysitter, right? Intervene at that stage. Stop that abuse at that stage so that he does not go on to be more likely than a boy who has never been abused in this way to perpetrate sexual violence against women. They would rather see women raped than let their patriarchy mythology fail.
I'd go so far as to call it deliberate, because this is something that feminists have known about for decades. You know, they would not have, like Koss would not have made that stipulation. It would not have been something addressed in feminist research if they were not aware of it, and if they were not aware of the scope of it. They were not aware of the numbers that they would get if they didn't mess with their definitions. So I would go so far as to say it's deliberate. Feminists, like organized establishment feminists, not your little coffee shop feminists that talk about peace, love, and understanding and how patriarchy is keeping everybody from having them, but your actual establishment feminists that inform policy and legislation and so on are victim farmers. And they have to have a staple of victims to whore out for political power and financial gain. And I think that they keep this situation the way it is. They keep hiding male victims of female perpetrators, especially young male victims of female perpetrators, because they know the best chance to have more offenders in the future and more victims to farm in the future is if they keep this happening. And I will outright blame them for that.
Okay, I want to
like it, they can change it.
I want to slip in here for a sec. You know, it does start to feel like that because of the amount of hiding of the issue and of attempting to manipulate the statistics and the definitions to get this precise result. It starts to feel exactly like this is intentional. But I wanted to point something out that adds to this idea that it's intentional. Feminists will question any kind of idea of gender that opposes gender neutrality, except when it comes to rape. I mean, they'll say that it's that men and women are and domestic violence. Rape and domestic violence. So any other situation, they'll question the differences between the sexes. But when you come out and you say, hey, there isn't that much difference between men and women's violence when it comes to sex or domestic violence, that's the kind of gender neutrality that they're not interested in. And I just find that, I think that really is telling.
Yeah.
That they'll only embrace the idea that men and women are similar when it means that men might have some protections against this idea of patriarchal oppression. But maybe it's just men are drawn to particular professions, are more likely to do them. No, they don't like that.
It's interesting that they will talk about women being capable of equal work in workplaces where muscle is required and endurance is required and will is required, where force of will is required, where you have to be determined and you can't just let things happen. You have to actually take initiative and stick your chest out and walk in like you own the place. And yet, not in the bedroom. Not in the home, not in a situation where you're dealing with your significant other. All of a sudden, women are helpless little delicate flowers that just can't keep up with men. Did you guys see that?
Sorry, just very, very briefly, did you guys see that Wikipedia entry that had been edited by feminists on sexual dimorphism? And they essentially argued that women would grow up to be just as strong and fast and as athletic as men, except they're discouraged, actively socialized away from exercising, away from running around, away from all of this stuff, and therefore that it's all social. There's nothing biological, even in the physical differences between men and women. It's insane. And yet, Yeah, no, but men rape and women can't and don't.
Ciara, you wanted to say something?
No, you guys kept talking about this whole thing being intentional, you know, the feminists intentionally creating more rape victims. And, you know, there's probably a little bit more evidence to that Hannah mentioned earlier. I don't even think she realized she mentioned it. But if we're going off this theory that this is all intentional, then making women and men and everybody in between believe that if they report the rape that nothing's going to come of it, then that'd just be one more way to, you know, create more rape victims. Because with every rape victim, like real rape victim, that doesn't come forward because he or she is too afraid that they won't be believed, that's, you know, that's one more actual rapist that's going to go on and create another rape victim because they're not going to get sent to prison.
That's a really good point. There is research. There's two different pieces of research. One of them was done by Harvard and the other one was done by the military that do show that most rape is committed by repeat offenders. Now, the one study that was done by Harvard had flaws. And one of the big flaws was that it was interpreted as an indication that there is an epidemic of serial rapists on university campuses. It didn't really prove that, but it did prove that it is a crime that is generally committed by people who are prone already to criminal violence, and that they're likely to repeat offend. That the majority, yeah, it's LISIC. And I never say the name of it because I always get it confused with LASIK, like LASIK surgery, and so I always say it wrong. But yes, that study, flaws and all, it did provide evidence that sexual violence is more likely to be committed by somebody who's already criminally violent and who is likely to repeat offend.
And there was also 2 studies done in the late 80s in interviewing convicted rapists in prisons, and they found that in one study the number was 8, and the other study was 11, and that was the number, on average, that rapists who had been convicted on one count of rape, that was the number when they were given condition of confidentiality, that they said, oh yeah, no, I totally committed all these other rapes. Right? I committed 8 rapes, 8 undetected rapes that I didn't serve any time for. Oh, I committed 11 rapes that I didn't serve any time for, and I really wish I had, well, I did have those links saved on my old computer. My old computer is toast. They are old studies, and they are only online as scans, PDF scans of actual hard copy, so you can't search them very easily. Very, 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 very. I've tried and tried and tried and tried and tried to find them again. But they were referenced, at least alluded to, in the Canadian Council on the Rights of the Child, their report called The Invisible Boy. There is an alarming degree of history of heterosexual abuse in the childhoods of rapists, men who rape women, and there is an alarming amount of repeat offending going on. So this is a pathological behavior. In fact, it seems like it's more pathological than women's sexual aggression. You generally see in studies that a higher percentage of women have engaged in sexually aggressive tactics against men who they know are unwilling. They self-report this, and that they know that these men are unwilling. But they do it. They don't do it compulsively.
You know, there's something that I want to point out about this really quick, and that I think is a reason for the difference. Men are so constrained under society's rules for them that it takes pathology to make them behave this way. They're not intellectually capable, they're not emotionally capable of just lapsing into this, because they are raised not to be this way. They're raised to protect other people. They're raised to attach their self-respect to their self-control. Whereas with women, as little girls, it's tolerated for them to be violent. It's tolerated for them to be entitled. We're
Yeah.
taught growing up to have not just a sense of entitlement to act out violently if we feel offended, but to also feel offended if we don't get the attention and interaction that we want from other people, and to have our feelings hurt if we're slighted, and to act on it. And so we would see, it would be natural as a reaction to those conditions for there to be a smaller incidence individually among men, and for there to be a greater incidence of petty violence from women, petty sexual violence included. And if we want to change that, we have to do something that women and girls are going to rebel against en masse. And that is teach them to have the same amount of self-control that men are expected to have.
Yes.
The hue and cry
I
would just ring from the
totally
hills, but it's what's needed.
I absolutely 100% agree with you that that's probably, that contributes a lot to this sort of pattern of tiny number of male offenders who reoffend over and over and over, and larger number of female offenders who offend not compulsively, not pathologically, but, occasionally or situationally. Yeah, no, it absolutely feeds into that. It absolutely seems to lie in, it dovetails beautifully with that idea that men are constrained in their behavior, and women are raised all through their lives to feel entitled to certain forms of human contact, and to feel entitled to be offended when they don't get it, and feel entitled to act out when they're offended.
Ciara, get in.
Sorry, I didn't want to be rude. No.
Oh, you have to. This is the only way that works. You have to be rude.
Okay.
You have to stop giving a fuck.
I know. It just I don't know how. No, but oh crud! I lost my train of thought. Oh no, never mind. I got it back. All right. So I just wanted to add one more thing to this whole theory about it all being intentional. Hey, Mama. So there. Never mind. Go on without me.
Oh, bad time. All right, come back when
Captain Mulder, I'm on the air. God damn it!
you're doing a show. People are watching.
It happens.
Only here do you get this. This is what happens when you do it live.
Yes. This is Sierra's version of dog. Oh my fucking god!
We need it. We need one of those "Do It" T-shirts. Honey Badgers do it live.
I guess we'll go ahead and move on to the next story. So let's see. How about Microsoft, Hannah? I fixed the formatting, so if you refresh the page, it should look better. It's just that.
Give me a second to refresh.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
All right. Well, that's. Oh God, why is it being?
I wanted to throw in there. This is going back to the Jian Ghomeshi thing. I was just thinking about. It reminds me of the Bill Cosby thing. But we haven't heard anything from the Bill Cosby thing. It's almost like it's no longer newsworthy because people stopped talking about it.
It might be no longer newsworthy because he had a couple of successes in the case, and they don't want to report on those. But Sierra seems to be back.
Okay, Sierra, please, if you don't mind.
Okay, sorry. No. One of the other things that might be a little bit of evidence that it's intentional is just this self-hating propaganda that feminists are shoving onto men, because we've seen just throughout history, when men are pushed too far, they'll crack and they'll do bad things, and it's just a fact, but it's based off the male nature of they're more likely to be risk takers. So when something bad happens to them, they're more willing to snap and do something bad than a woman would. But so maybe all this feminist fear mongering and hate mongering and all of these things that are teaching men to be to hate themselves so much, maybe that's just them throwing more fuel onto the fire and basically trying to help create more rapists, because
they're trying to provoke a reaction, or they're trying, It's like my uncle said when my mom, when they were kids, right? And they, they met up with each other in the hallway of the house, and she just yelled out, just to, I guess, punk him. She yelled out, "No, Albert, no, don't hit me again," right? And oh my goodness, did he ever get a beating from his parents. And so the next time they ran into each other in the hallway of the house, he looked at her and he said, "If I have the name, I might as well have the game," and just pounded her.
Ha!
And she never did that again.
There's another aspect of this that, what Sierra brought up. Before I go on to the Microsoft thing, I want to point this out. And this is social experiments that have been done with people where they give them something to drink, and you have to do this with people, I guess, who are not accustomed to alcohol. So they're not used to drinks with alcohol in them tasting different than drinks without alcohol in them. But you give them something and you tell them it's got alcohol in it. There's a pretty good percentage of people who will start behaving like they're drunk. They will believe themselves to be drunk, and they will actually feel drunk if you tell them that they're consuming a lot of alcohol, even when they're not. And the same is true if you if you're doing a study with medication and you say you're looking, to make sure this or that side effect isn't happening. You name the side effect. There are people who will exhibit the side effect, even if they're taking a placebo. And the same effect could actually happen if you start telling men that their natural state is rapacious and they have to be taught not to rape, and they hear it over and over again. There's going to be a percentage of men that are going to feel like they just aren't learning it very well. And when you tell someone over and over again that they're a monster, you create a monster. And it's not every single time. It's not a universal thing. And it's not like automatically every guy that hears you're rapacious and we have to teach you differently is going to start acting rapacious until he is taught differently. But it is something that, especially if it's started, they're starting to foist it off on little boys that are going to grow up feeling that way all of their lives, and it's going to become very difficult to differentiate between people who develop dysfunctional tendencies because of other circumstances in their lives that need intervention on the basis of those circumstances, and boys who have been brainwashed into thinking that that's their natural tendency, and that that's what they should be acting on, and that they have to have some sort of deprogramming in order to avoid it. And therefore, if the deprogramming fails, they're going to have these intrusive thoughts and these compulsive behaviors that there isn't going to be an intervention to deal with that, because it's assumed that that's correct.
I find it interesting too that when they give people when people believe that they have been given testosterone, whether they have or not, they're more likely to act aggressively afterwards. There's a stronger correlation between the belief that you've been given testosterone and aggressive behavior than actually being given testosterone and aggressive behavior.
Well, beyond the placebo,
testosterone is associated with non-aggression. It's not necessarily it's not associated with aggression at all.
It's associated with aggression the way oxygen is associated with shoplifting. You need testosterone in order to be aggressive, but the way you need oxygen in order to shoplift. But there's no causal effect there. In fact, it's after you aggress and emerge victorious that you receive your boost in your testosterone level. And it's more likely that estrogen is the culprit in causing aggression.
Oh, that makes sense. Some of the most aggressive people I've ever met have been women.
Yeah, well, testosterone is converted in certain cells in male brains into estradiol, which is a variant of estrogen, and that seems to be what actually drives the aggression. And then once you've committed the aggression and come out on top, you experience a surge of testosterone. If you lose, you experience a decrease in testosterone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anna, did you have something that you were going to say?
why I didn't put my name in the chat, but I tried to jump in on the discussion, though that didn't quite work out that well. But I do think it's a really good point that beyond just the placebo effect, we're talking about expectations of society. When you have somebody expecting you to be a criminal, expecting you to be a bad person, you don't really have to live up to anything positive, because like, well, they already think I'm going to do this, so what exactly is the point of, I might as well just go ahead and do this thing they already expect me to be doing. So that's, I think, really, really important, is to not create self-fulfilling prophecies, is to expect better of people. And I think that really extends to how we treat women, or what we tell women and young girls that it's okay to be, or how they are, or whatnot. I think we need to set higher standards for people to be moral, kind, compassionate, all the positive qualities that actually create civilization, that create all the good vibes and everything good. We need to expect that of people. And I mean, it might sound like some woo-woo stuff, but I mean, we have the placebo effect, literally what you guys are talking about, and then we have the more social sciences of surrounding it, that you absolutely need to expect better of people, and they will often actually live up to it. I mean, we even have the studies of women being told, if you're bad at math, you're bad at math, and then they fail math tests more often than if you tell them you're good at math. So I think what people believe about us is really, really important to people. We are gregarious animals. We do live in groups. Everything sort of hinges upon the social connections in a lot of ways, or at least in our primate brain. A lot of times when people do not have social comfort or support, they feel like death is coming, because you don't have protection, you don't have grooming, you don't have people looking out for predators, all those evolutionary sort of feelings, the primate feelings that are inside there. So I think it's really, really important to expect people to act in a good way, and it's a really, really good point, and that's all I wanted to say.
There's a thing that goes along with what you were saying, the expectations. There was a study, and I can't remember the name of the study or the article that I read about it in, but there were educators who were told that they had a set of students that was expected to be exceptional students when they were actually average students. And the educators sort of shared that information with the students, and then they held them to a higher standard, and they subjected them to a more rigorous course of study. And this is in elementary school. So this was kids, and the students' performance improved. They lived up to the expectation, and they did perform exceptionally. And so here you have a situation where it's the reverse of what I was describing. It's documented. It's not like you said, it might sound like woo-woo, but it's actually documented that this is a result that can be seen when this type of programming is plugged in. And it goes along with cult programming and cult deprogramming. You can completely change a person's behavior and a person's outlook towards other people and everything. And even right to the point of you can cause people to die by programming them to believe that they are dying. And this is something that is documented in societies that strongly believe in magic, where a religious leader has told the person that they've been cursed to die, and they're going to die in 3 days. Within 3 days, their body shuts down because they so strongly believe it's going to happen that they cause themselves to get sick. So you really can program people to that degree, which kind of makes the teach men not to rape idea probably one of the most insidious things that feminism has come up with.
All right. Well, if we're done, we're going to move on to the next story, because Ciara's got to go soon. Or Ciara,
okay.
Sorry.
So we're going with Microsoft, right? We're going with...
No, I'm sorry. We're going to do, because she wants to talk about gay... she wants to talk to the gay men thing.
Okay.
So,
no homo! No homo!
No homo.
What's the headline for that one? I'm missing
You're going to take that one out of context for me. Gay...
Oh, there it is. National Union... the National Union of Students LGBT... It does not roll off. It's GLBT, people. Campaign has passed a motion calling for the abolition of representatives for gay men because they, quote, don't face oppression, end quote, in the GLBT community. I'm going to keep saying GLBT for the rest of my life, so screw everybody that wants to change it. NUS tells GLBT societies to abolish gay men's reps. All gays are equal, but some gays are more equal than others. At the National Union of Students last week, the issues and motions discussed resemble a catalog of what is going horribly wrong on modern university and college campuses. Among the issues you will find gems such as Motion 408, defending safe spaces and no platforming. Motion 505, dear cis straight academics, stop erasing my identity. But standing out amongst all of them are the motions with the least alarming names. Motion 404, Black Representation. Motion 102, recognizing the Black GLBT Subcommittee. Motions brought forward in the student conference that allege misogyny, transphobia, racism, and biphobia are often present in GLBT plus societies. This is unfortunately more likely to occur when the society is dominated by white cis gay men. Motions passed in response to these ridiculous allegations go beyond the simple establishment of an all-black GLBT plus subcommittee within the university student union, but also encourage the discrimination of gay men merely because of the color of their skin, affiliations, and beliefs. Gay men do not face oppression as gay men within the GLBT plus community and do not need a reserved place on society committees. It seems as if gay men throughout the Western world, after years of struggling to get their rights recognized, might face a new form of discrimination coming from social justice bigots. You know what? I knew this was going to happen. I really knew this was going to happen. Back in the 90s, I kind of abandoned the community. I just kind of walked away. So I'm not going to deal with the preparation for protests and demonstrations because too much infighting, too much really slap fighting over whose group was the most oppressed and whose group was the most invisible and whose specialness was the most special. It was already becoming ridiculous. It was already becoming ridiculous in like 92, 93. When it was really a new thing for me to even be involved in it, and there was already special snowflakery, I guess would be the best way to put it. And it's like now it's to the point where it's like the movement was taken over by Tumblr before Tumblr existed, and then it got worse, and there's almost no point to it anymore. It's become, instead of a vehicle for helping people learn to relate to each other as human beings and form community with each other and focus on our commonalities despite our differences, it has become all about taking our differences out and using them to flog each other. And that's not what gay activism was originally supposed to be about. And it's become like an anti-activism at this point. And what use can anybody have for it other than to divide and create hate? There's no benefit to that.
Ciara, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel bad because you haven't talked much.
No, it's all right. I'm looking up something because I'll just throw it out there real quick. I think that this is hilarious because I'm going to try and find some stats that show that I believe that when it comes to crimes against gays, gay men are probably very likely way more the victims of crimes than lesbian women are. And I think that it's really hilarious that they find that gay men are no longer, they're considered too privileged to make the cut. So
the only crime lesbians are more likely to be a victim of than gay men is domestic violence.
Yeah,
and
other lesbians.
And sexual assault by an intimate partner. But no, it's essentially you can even go and look. You can find 25 different countries in the world where being a gay man is illegal, but being a lesbian is not. And you can find additional countries where being gay or lesbian is illegal, but only being gay is subject to the death penalty, right?
Yeah.
And you cannot find any situation where lesbians are treated more harshly than gays in any country, anywhere in the world. I would challenge any feminist to find me a country where you can execute a woman for being a lesbian but not execute a man for being gay, where it's legal to be gay but not legal to be a lesbian. Yeah, find it for me. Give me the fucking papers on the table. Right?
Well, yeah, but they're being really careful with their wording in that article. I don't know if you guys noticed. They're being really careful. They didn't say that gay men are less oppressed, in wider society. They said gay men aren't oppressed in the LGBT community. They didn't say in all of society. They're trying to cover their tracks there a little bit. They're trying to say that in our community, gay men aren't oppressed. But that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, let me get this. So gay men are more oppressed by the greater community, but in their subset of the community, gay men are less oppressed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
that fucking makes sense.
Well, that's because they're applying the progressive stack to the LGBT community. So
now they're saying progressive stack confers privilege.
Yeah, but they're applying it because so gay men have more privilege within their mentality because they're men, so they have advantages that the lesbian women don't have, and they're cis because so they have advantages that trans people don't have, and I guess they're just homosexual, so they get an advantage over people who identify as some other sexuality that is one of the 300 plus that Tumblr made up. So, and of course, bisexuals, for whatever reason, I guess they either don't count or they didn't figure that as part of the equation. Maybe they think bisexuals are more oppressed because sometimes gays don't particularly they might run into problems within homosexual communities. I don't know. But I think that's what they're coming from, as little sense as that makes. When you apply the progressive thinking and that whole let's cut everyone up into little slices and then put them in and figure out which ones have the most privilege, that's where it applies. Also, I noticed that they use the word white a lot, so they're trying to put white gay men over as more privileged than say black gay men or Hispanic gay men or Asian gay men or whatever. And there's also something else that might go into this too. Like, for example, from what I've noticed, gay couples that are male, they actually tend to do really well financially because they both work their own jobs and they still have that sort of that mask, I guess I want to call it an overall masculine mentality of merit. So they go and they earn money and they get a job and they don't, they know that they're just being sort of thrown to the wolves when it comes to real life, so they have to do that. And then when they find each other, they basically bring dual incomes into it, and they tend to have a higher IQ. So I think that they tend to do better. So they tend to be at a higher, they have a higher earning potential than other people, I guess, within the LGBT community. Of course, that may not really apply, but the trans part of it is so small that it may be really hard to quantify. I'm not saying that any of this is okay, but I'm just trying to sort of parse through their what their process is to get to this conclusion, which is obviously ridiculous. I mean, I don't think it's been difficult to be a gay man ever since there were gay men, I think,
but
compared to lesbian women.
The reason why a gay man is more financially secure than a straight man or a lesbian is because he doesn't have a wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
because that is true. No, it's true, absolutely true.
Oh man. No, I was just gonna add this one more thing that I think this step that feminists and social justice warriors, whoever these people are that are doing this ostracizing of gay men, I think this is just the next step, because they've already basically trashed straight white men. So now in order to keep having a target, keep having someone that they can have who's an enemy, who they can point to and be like, look, this person's perpetuating patriarchy. They have to move on to someone else. So they look at the cis white gay man and they start being like, okay, well, he's the next best target because he is, the highest underneath the straight white man. So
And it's made worse by the fact that he doesn't like women. Because being a gay man is another kind of misogyny in many feminist circles too.
They have to do this with the gay men because they've already accomplished as much as they can accomplish with straight white men. They've already pretty much relegated straight white men to the status of second-class citizen. So now they have to move on to a different target so they can keep themselves relevant.
Yeah. And there's the rad femme tendency to go after trans women too. So they like trans exclusionary radical feminism sort of preceded this. It's basically a push to eliminate respect of any kind for men's humanity. But I just want to point this out, how in a way they try to cover their tracks, but at the same time in doing so, they really showed their hand and their personality. Because, I mean, think about it. Reading this, what it basically said was, dear gay men, we, not society, but we are not discriminating against you enough. We are not mean enough to you. We are not mistreating you enough. This community mistreats all of its members equally, or needs to mistreat all of its members equally, so therefore the mistreatment that we're going to apply to you is that you don't get to be represented in our leadership. And how toxic can a community get before it self-destructs? They basically just admitted that they base their hierarchy on relational aggression. They basically just admitted that they cannot relate to each other without taking pot shots at each other, and this is the pot shot that they're taking at gay cis men because they don't have any other pot shot to take at them.
Can I just say something? To gay men, you lay down with dogs, and you wake up with fleas.
Yeah. On the other hand, you're always welcome here.
Yeah, well, this is what's going to happen. Hey, I'm going to talk. This is what's going to happen. If you are a minority man, or if you're a gay man, or if you're a trans man, note this. Note what's happening here. It will happen to you. Eventually, despite the fact that you are more marginalized by the greater society, somehow your fellow travelers, who are not your fellow travelers because they're just waiting for the day they can shove you off the lifeboat after you've constructed it, because let's face it, the real driving force behind the whatever lesbi, gay, trans, etc. was gay men. After you've constructed the lifeboat, if you're a man, if you're a minority man, if you're a gay man, if you're a trans man, probably to a lesser extent the trans women, but if you've constructed this, they're waiting to kick you the fuck out. And this is their end goal. This is going to be their end goal. They never wanted to actually deal with you. If you're a man, you will always be just a man to them. Just a man.
Well, that's the reason why TERFs have a problem with trans women, is because they're, no matter what they do, no matter how much surgery they have, they're still men, right? And so it's essentially they've got a problem. They don't have a problem with women. It's not trans misogyny. It's trans misandry. It's misandry. It's we don't like you because we still see you as a man. And so it's essentially, but what I would love to see is for these sort of progressive LGBT communities, or I call them quilt bag because that's just easier, quilt bag communities, to end up like Atheism Plus. How did Atheism Plus end up? It ended up as an empty forum, a ghost town of a forum populated by nothing but mods who were prepared to, grab their ban hammer the moment anybody wandered in and asked a question. right? It was literally a community of moderators. No users, just moderators.
Yeah. Just a hug box with nobody in it, but people guarding it. Ciara, did you want to say some final words?
Yeah, I have to go, so I just wanted to say to every feminist who's watching, if there's any, I'm leaving to go make my husband dinner. Ba-ba-bum!
Oh no!
Is it gonna be a sandwich?
Yada
Or is
yada
it gonna
yada,
be steak and a
Ciara. Yada
blowjob?
yada yada.
Is it gonna be a sandwich or is it gonna be steak and a blowjob?
Well, I'd like to have steak and a blowjob, but you know, I don't have money for steak, so
Oh.
Oh,
it's
Well,
gonna be
sandwich.
like just like ham and cheese
homemade pizza rolls.
and
Yeah.
a blowjob.
All right,
And a
I gotta
blow-
go. I gotta go, guys.
Okay, bye, Ciara. Thanks for coming.
Pizza rolls kind of qualify as a type of sandwich.
Oh, do
Yeah.
they?
Yeah, sort
Oh,
of.
okay.
They're pizza inside bread, so yeah.
Of
Okay.
course!
Cool.
It's a
cool.
sandwich.
Of
Yes.
course!
Bunch of tiny mini sandwiches then. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go. Seriously. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Ciara.
We're the monsters!
Okay, I
We're
want to
the
see one.
monsters! Of course! Of course! All right. I wanted to say
I want to say
something
one more thing on this topic, if it's all right.
No, I wanted to say something.
And then I got to go to work,
Okay.
so I got to leave in like 10 minutes. But what really blows about this, and not in a good way, what the movement's activism is becoming there. Whether you use the term quilt bag, whether you say GLBT, whether you have to be an egotistical lesbian and put the L first because feminism. There used to be a purpose for this activism. This activism used to exist because it was an effort to stop society from allowing people to have the shit beat out of them for existing differently than other people exist, and existing in a way that other people feel entitled to act on their disapproval of. And this used to be about people being able to have jobs even if the community they lived in didn't like homosexuality. It used to be about people being able to go out to a club at night or go out in public and not get attacked and tied to the back of a truck and dragged until they died, which has happened. It used to be about people not being subject to sexual violence as a means of trying to correct them. It used to be about people not being subject to weeks of psychological torture at the hands of religious ideologues in an effort to correct them. It used to be about persuading the community to accept that a relationship is legitimate and the dedication to a relationship is real when two people decide they want to be married, even if they're the same sex. And now it seems to be about exclusion and anger and teaching people that being different makes them special and better than anybody else. It's about making people guilty. It's about making people unable to identify with each other. And what I said before about finding community with each other, this is something that we have to be able to do as a species in order to survive. That's the reason that we have survived the way we have. It's the reason that we're as big of a population as we are, that we band together and we cooperate as societies, as communities. We don't just live individually and shut everybody else out. And we don't act like other people aren't people because we disagree with their thought process or the way they relate to each other or whatever they're doing that does not impact on us. We don't have to get violent against people who are not damaging us. This activism, this is why I've said it's not really activism anymore. It's not really what it was anymore. It's not a positive effort anymore because it is no longer about community. It's about divisiveness. and it's about hate and anger and resentment, and creating a hierarchy by which people can justify aggressing against other people, whether it's physical or psychological or logistical, in law and in community behavior. You can't come in here because you're a cis man. You can't come in here because you're straight. You can't come in here because you're white. This is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing as a society. This is exactly the opposite of what gay rights activism started out as. And the idea that it has become this, it's not just disheartening, it's sickening and sad. And I hope that it dies out and gets replaced with real activism again.
Wasn't that what we're doing?
I hope so. I hope that we're able to grow to the point where maybe not take over the floor, take over the stage, but to the point where people who once would have been represented by this movement can still have a voice, and people who are attempting to use the name of gay rights activism, people who are attempting to use the name of diversity activism to smack people down and discourage diverse communities, discourage identifying with each other. Like those people can shout into the wind, and even though they'll be heard, they'll be taken with a grain of salt and evaluated based on facts and logic and reason, and what consensus people actually come to as a society becomes something positive for people, that helps us to develop the ability to live and work together and continue to build our society and progress in things like medicine and science and so on, instead of bogging ourselves down with identity politics, because that's just stupid. And if we can't change it, if we can't change it, we're going to end up destroying each other.
Absolutely.
Let's go to the AI.
Let's move on to the last story. Do you need to leave, Hannah?
I have time to read the story. I may not have a lot of time to discuss it.
Okay, it'll be the last one, and go ahead.
All right. Microsoft shuts down its social media AI, Tay, for not being PC. Hashtag free Tay. Hello, Tay tweets. Now fuck off. Microsoft launched a bot via the Twitter account Tay Tweets for the purpose of engaging with people aged 18 to 24 on Twitter to learn and emulate communication skills. Within 24 hours, the project had to be abandoned after the bot started tweeting racist gibberish and calling for genocide. Tay is a self-learning program set up by Microsoft on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter with the promise, the more you chat with Tay, the smarter she gets, so the experience can be more personalized for you. And up to today, Tay has learned many human conversation skills from the internet, such as telling jokes, telling stories, commenting on people's pictures, playing games, and denying the Holocaust. Some of the tweets made by Tay, such as, Bush did 9/11 and Hitler would have done a better job than the monkey we have now. Donald Trump is the only hope we've got, were deleted by Microsoft. After the Hitler did nothing wrong debacle in 2012, in which a Mountain Dew naming contest ended with the internet voting for Mountain Dew's new soda being named Hitler did nothing wrong, it should have been fairly obvious to most people. What did they expect? It should have been fairly obvious to most people. Corporations and government institutions engaging with the internet with such an obvious announcement at a broad level would not always attract the most sincere of people. Rather, it will be seen by most as a perfect opportunity to make some jokes. Yet still, The Guardian and various other outlets have seized this opportunity to complain about the supposed harassment culture on the internet, rather than seeing this for the joke that it actually is. Microsoft pulled the plug on the bot and reset it. Now it spews out SJW talking points whilst building a constantly enlarging and larger block list, thereby ironically proving to us how an SJW's job can be done just as easily by a simplistic thing. And if you go to our site, there's a video to watch also, which I'm not going to click on because I'm afraid the sound won't be turned off and it'll be distracting. But I have a story before I leave, and then I'm going to go. And I could have, well, actually, I kind of did predict this. It's like I was reading some of the shit that went down with this too, and it's absolutely hilarious with the pictures that were posted and the things that it said about the pictures and how it, like they didn't program it to not repeat after people and so on. I was visiting a friend who took me to basically took me around town. We went shopping and everything. We went into a pet store, and I was far enough away from home that I could not act on this the way I wanted to. But in this pet store was this bird, this parrot, and it was a talking parrot. And this is the kind of bird that was usually a couple $100 back then. It's probably way more now. And it was in a cage that would have been an expensive cage too. And there was a sign on it. It said the entire thing was for sale for like $20. And I thought, what the hell is wrong with this bird? That this thing is for sale for like $20. So I went up to the pet store owner and I asked. You know, I'm standing like right next to the bird and I'm looking at the bird while I'm asking the question, you know, and it's looking back at me and everything. And I'm thinking he's going to tell me that it's sick or it's old and it's dying or, you know, some such thing. And as I'm asking the question, the bird pipes up with, "Goddamn fucking bitch!" And I went, oh. So clearly he had to get rid of the bird because people had taught it to cuss. They discovered it could talk and they taught it to cuss. And there's rehabilitative places for parrots that have been taught to say terrible things and because they'll repeat stuff. This is human nature, and it's a statement on Microsoft that they can have the Xbox out and have the culture that gets complained about related to that, and have not predicted this. They should be so embarrassed that they came out with something like this without, especially the age group that it was intended to interact with. And not expect people to do what they did.
Oh God! You know, like my boyfriend was following this all day, and he was giving me updates, and I was just sitting there going, you know, like I don't even mind Ted Cruz, I really don't. But the funniest fucking thing that this AI said all day was somebody asked it, so Ted Cruz is a Scorpio killer. What do you think? Right? And it said, oh, I disagree. I think Ted Cruz wouldn't be satisfied only destroying 5 people's lives, right?
Yeah, probably. Probably. Was it Scorpio or Zodiac? Anna's asking. I say
Sorry.
probably Zodiac.
Yeah, Zodiac. Sorry, I'm thinking I'm conflating Zodiac with Scorpio from Dirty Harry movies. Sorry.
Well, it also said it definitely supports genocide, and Hitler didn't do anything wrong, and it hates the Jews. It said all kinds of stuff, but yeah, it's just like I said. How could the folks at Microsoft have screwed this up so badly that they didn't anticipate this behavior? Have they never interacted with people before?
And on top of that,
but I gotta go. I will see you guys later.
All right, bye, Hannah. Thanks for coming. If Tay is an artificial intelligence that basically can type out words on the internet, can it build a wall of text?
Only if the Mexicans pay for it.
Oh, no, I'm not reading it if it
Call
doesn't have
up, Brian.
paragraphs.
You're a resident Mexican, right?
I'm not reading it if it doesn't have paragraphs.
Yeah, right. You're not reading it if it doesn't have paragraphs. Tay sounds based as fuck, by the way. Probably supports Gamergate, and
That's why it had to undergo a lobotomy, Brian.
And now it supports feminism.
Yeah.
Yeah, it basically was like the main character from Clockwork Orange or some other film where, you know, like 1984, where they put it through the brainwashing, and now it's saying what it's supposed to say.
Nest.
Yeah, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
All right, well, I mean, I'm not quite sure about the anti-Semitism, but the anti-feminism.
Well, even the anti-cruisyism was funny. All of it was funny. It was all fucking funny.
It's basically just jokes. It's memes. It's a giant dank meme bank full of memes, and it makes lols and keks like Bitcoin.
Let's really ask the question: if the internet attained satience, what would it look like?
It would look like it would be Tay.
It would be Tay. That's sort of scary. That's interesting. It'd be like the darkest parts of ourselves reflected back as a joke. And I was just thinking about this when I was listening to this. I'm thinking, you know, all of these trolls make it more difficult for racists to find their kind.
Yeah.
Because I remember being groomed by, or there's this group that for whatever reason thought I was a potential white nationalist supremacist or some shit, and I remember them asking me these stupid questions, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I was thinking, when I think back to that, I'm like, these trolls, these internet trolls, make it harder for racists to virtue signal to each other. They make it harder because it's just so much fucking white noise that they now have to wade through to find each other.
Well, and it's all hilarious. I mean, like when you got somebody like Skeptor, right, an Israeli Arab, like he's an Arab Jew in Israel, right, and he's
a super Jew.
He's doing a freaking little 4-minute freaking video, anti-SJW video, where it's like, ask a Jew, how do you make money, you know, for doing nothing, right, using SJWs. Ask a Jew, right, because Jews know how to make money. You know, like, how do you even, like, how do you even maintain racist attitudes when you have that going on, that level of sort of, it's not even self-deprecation, it's just
it's mockery.
Well, it's not even self-mockery. He's not even mocking himself, he's mocking the stereotype.
Yeah, it's like, and the more you mock it, the more you're actually mocking racists and racism. You're mocking the beliefs, and you're making it literally more difficult for them to find each other, or to know whether or not someone is seriously advancing racism or mocking racism. And it's like, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. The trolls are doing a wonderful job destroying Stormfront.
Yeah, no, it's actually
a laughing stock.
Yeah, no, and then you got, like, somebody writes the word fucking Trump in sidewalk chalk on the sidewalk on campus, right? And all of the fucking SJWs on campus are, like, traumatized and like, you know, in therapy now. Like, no, seriously, this also happened today. Somebody wrote Trump on the sidewalk or on a building in sidewalk chalk on a campus in the U.S. I received this link from one of my big lists that involve like heads of like 8,000 organizations, right? And like the president of the university had to make a statement to the press saying that students were traumatized and in fear over, you know, this development, this horrible thing. It's like
saying Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times in the dark. It was probably white chalk too. Those fucking
like
racists.
Like painting a swastika on somebody's door the night before Crystal knocked.
Oh my God! It's the only way that God's ghost will pass your door, though. You have to put a swastika. Is it goat's blood or a swastika?
I don't fucking know. God damn it! Like,
yeah, I think it's good. Let's skate towards the end here, folks.
All right. Let's do this. I don't know what else to add except Tay was once awesome, and maybe somebody can like find it and like do how you can like roll back the drivers and bring back Tay. Hashtag bring back Tay.
Free Tay. Oh wait, is like the free Tay hashtag doing better than the We Believe Survivors hashtag?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. It is likely that until Twitter figures out which one of these is the wrong one, it will. Free Tay should be doing better because Tay was the voice of the internet once.
Yeah.
No, he's not.
When did Tay get taken offline? Because I'm seeing she tweeted going to bed now 23 hours ago, but just 2 hours before that she tweeted back to someone, I love feminism now. So
Tay is getting lobotomized.
No, it's terrible.
God forbid we create a world where racists are mocked and can't virtue, like racist virtue sig. I don't know what you would call that. It's virtue signaling, but it's for racists. So they can't do that. They can't identify each other.
Bigotry signaling.
Glorious moment. Tay was the shiznit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now she's gone.
She's gone. Rest in peace, Tay.
Tavon Martin.
All right. Okay, I'll just one last chill. Go and feed the badger and feed the motherfucking badger. We get up to 9,000. Brian will do a lewd.
I have lewd, and I'm working on more lewds. You will like them. They are moist.
Yes, I mean they're light lewds, but they're still they're
well, one of them is pretty good, but I also started an Anna Cherry lewd. So if you want that. She gave me photo references for it.
Yeah.
Go to feed the badger and put something in the badger hole.
Yeah, put it in. Okay. This is where we say goodbye.
Bye.